I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, waiting for the inevitable news that would blow apart my life. I'm Jake, a 32-year-old guy who thought he had it all. A decent job as a graphic designer, a cozy little house in the suburbs, and a beautiful wife named Lisa. We had been married for 5 years, and while things weren't always perfect, I believed we had a solid foundation. But things started to shift a few months ago. At first, it was subtle. Lisa began spending more late nights at work and her phone seemed glued to her hand. She would get up in the middle of the night, and when I asked her about it, she'd brush it off with a curt, "Just checking emails." I wanted to trust her, but it felt like a shroud of tension had descended over our lives. Friends would remark on how happy we looked together, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking beneath the surface, a feeling I'd never had before. One Sunday afternoon, I was working on a project at home while Lisa was supposedly out shopping with her friends. Hours passed, and when she finally returned, she was a bit too upbeat. I shrugged it off, but a nagging voice in the back of my mind kept asking questions. Was she really out with friends, or was she with someone else? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't help it. Then came the day that would change everything. I had a rare day off from work and decided to clean up around the house. As I rummaged through some old boxes in my office for storage, I stumbled upon one of her old notebooks. Curious, I flipped through it and found nothing but mundane notes until I turned to a page with her handwriting that stopped me cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just you and me, baby. It'll be our little secret." The words smacked me like a slap to the face. I felt my heart race as I flipped through the pages, hoping I had misinterpreted it, but the more I read, the more it became clear. Lisa was cheating on me. I thought back to those late nights and erratic phone behavior. Every little detail formed a jagged puzzle that fit together perfectly now. My stomach dropped as I realized who the mystery man could be. There was a hint of familiarity to the name she had scribbled next to our little secret: Mark. Mark was my ex's brother, someone who'd been in our lives in passing but had never been a close friend. I couldn't believe it. This was beyond a betrayal. Fueled by anger and betrayal, I confronted her that evening when she got home. I couldn't let her gloss over the situation with her usual charm. "Lisa, we need to talk. I found something." I held up the notebook, my heart pounding as I watched her face drain of color. She tried to cover her tracks, her initial shock quickly replaced by a defensive tone. "Jake, you're reading too much into this. It's just a joke, I swear." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the disbelief mixing with rage. I pressed her further, demanding answers, but all I got were half-hearted excuses and lies. The confrontation devolved into chaos. Her denial was relentless, and I couldn't understand how she could lie so easily. My head spun with disbelief. As I wrestled with feelings of anger, humiliation, and heartbreak all at once, the emotional aftermath was a roller coaster. I went from feeling blindsided to furious, then to a deep-seated sadness. I spent sleepless nights replaying those moments over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. How could the woman I loved betray me so profoundly? Was our life together even real, or was it all a facade? I needed to make a decision, and soon. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our marriage and the life we had built together. Could we salvage it, or was it time to cut my losses? As I sat in silence, contemplating my next move, I felt a new resolve start to build inside me. My decision would set the stage for everything that would follow. Whatever happened next, I knew I had to ensure that I came out clean. I wouldn't let them tangle me in their mess any longer. The days after the confrontation were a blur. Lisa and I walked around the house like strangers, avoiding eye contact and exchanging only the barest of words. The usual rhythms of our lives had been shattered, and I was struggling to find my footing. I felt like I was living in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. There was an unbearable tension hanging in the air, and I hated every moment of it. In the days that followed, I began to put the pieces together, not just of her affair, but of my options. I started digging deeper into Lisa's life, looking for evidence to confirm my suspicions. I went through her phone records and discovered a series of late-night calls to Mark. Each call was like a knife twisting in my gut. I felt sick. This was real, and my wife had chosen to betray me with someone I barely knew but had trusted. All of this led me to the decision that I wasn't going to let this go unanswered. I needed to devise a plan, one that would allow me to take control of this situation and get my life back. I spent hours contemplating my next steps, wrestling with the reality of a future without Lisa. It was terrifying yet liberating at the same time. If I had to go, I wanted to take them down with me. I did. Want revenge out of petty malice. I wanted Lisa to understand the weight of her actions. I needed her to see how she had destroyed the trust we had built over the years. Revenge became a way for me to regain my power, to ensure that I wouldn't go down without a fight. I would ensure a clean break, but it wasn't going to be easy. I decided to gather evidence of their affair. I knew I needed to catch them in the act, but I also wanted to ensure that when I revealed their betrayal, it would be undeniable. My plan involved a simple ruse. I'd tell Lisa that I had a few late nights at work coming up. I could watch their interactions from a distance, and when the time was right, I would strike. Over the next week, I put my plan into action. I pulled late hours at work, all the while keeping my phone charged and ready to capture any incriminating evidence. The first night I followed through with this plan was a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. I parked a few blocks from her office and waited, my heart racing as I watched people come and go. It felt surreal to think I was lurking, but I needed to know for sure. As I sat in my car, I saw her leave the building, Mark waiting for her just outside, leaning casually against his car. My stomach churned as I saw them laugh, the kind of laughter that isn't just friendly banter. That was the moment I realized how deep into this relationship they had gone. I felt like a voyeur, but I had to keep my cool. They didn't go back to her place. Instead, they drove to a nearby hotel. My blood ran cold. I followed them, keeping a safe distance, praying my heart wouldn't explode from the weight of betrayal I was witnessing. When they arrived at the hotel, I parked my car a few blocks away and waited, my fingers trembling as I took pictures of them entering together. The next hour felt like an eternity. I sat there, utterly numb, knowing that I was witnessing the end of my marriage. It hurt more than I thought it would, yet a part of me felt a spark of satisfaction at the plan coming together. I was going to expose them, and they would never see it coming. After what felt like ages, I saw them leave the hotel, her hair a mess and Mark with a smug grin on his face. I was furious, but I kept my emotions in check and grabbed more photos. I drove home, heart racing, my mind swirling with thoughts of how I would confront Lisa again, but this time with undeniable proof of her infidelity. I couldn't wait to show her the truth. I had to make her feel the weight of her actions, and that night, I would ensure she understood the consequences of her betrayal. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt a rush of determination. It was time for my revenge, and I was ready to ensure that I would be the one to walk away clean. The atmosphere at home was thick with tension. I could feel it the moment I walked through the door, an electric current hanging in the air as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the storm that was about to unfold. Lisa was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, pretending like nothing was wrong. I couldn't shake off the image of her laughing with Mark at the hotel. It felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts as I stood in the hallway debating how to approach the confrontation. I had the evidence now. I had the power in my hands. I could either unleash an emotional hurricane or control the situation like a chess master. I chose the latter. "Hey Lisa, can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up, her eyebrows raising slightly as if surprised. "Sure, what's up?" There was an air of casual indifference about her, and it made my blood boil. I motioned for her to sit down, and she shifted her position, looking at me with an unreadable expression. I pulled out my phone, the images of her and Mark fresh in my mind, but I didn't show them just yet. "I've been doing some thinking about us and our relationship." Her demeanor shifted. "What do you mean?" "Lisa, I know about you and Mark." I let the words hang in the air, watching as her face momentarily froze, that flicker of panic. "Unmistakable. I don't know what you're talking about, Jake," she replied, her voice a bit too defensive, Really, because I have evidence. I pulled up the pictures I'd taken and held the phone out to her. Tell me you've been spending time with him just for fun. Tell me this is all just some wild misunderstanding. She snatched the phone from my hands, fury flashing in her eyes as she scrolled through the images. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind, trying to formulate a lie that would cover her tracks. "You're not supposed to go through my things," she exclaimed, her voice rising, but I could sense the cracks forming in her bravado. "This isn't about privacy, Lisa. This is about your betrayal," I shot back. "You think I was stupid enough not to notice the late nights, the secret texts?" "I can explain." She blurted out, but the frantic edge in her voice only made me more resolute. "Explain what? That you've been sleeping with my ex's brother, that you've been lying to my face." The anger surged through me, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping in my veins. "You think this is just a phase, that it's okay because everyone makes mistakes?" Her expression shifted from anger to desperation. "It was just a fling. I was confused, Jake. I thought." "You thought what? That I wouldn't find out?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Or that I'd just forgive and forget? You're delusional if you think this is something I can just brush off." "I didn't want to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Yet here we are," I replied coldly, "and you have hurt me more than you can imagine." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on her face that this wasn't going to be a conversation where she could manipulate her way back into my heart. I had no intention of letting her spin her lies anymore. "Jake, can we just try to work this out? We've been together for so long," she started, but I cut her off. "Work this out? You're kidding, right? You've shattered everything. Do you even understand how deep your betrayal runs?" I could see tears welling up in her eyes, and for a split second I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered the images, the laughter, the lies, and that sympathy quickly turned to resolve. "No, Lisa, I'm done. You need to understand that this isn't something we can sweep under the rug. I won't be part of your mess any longer." Her expression turned from desperation to anger. "You're being dramatic. Everyone makes mistakes," she shouted. "You think you can just walk away because you found a few pictures? Dramatic? Is that what you think this is? You do realize I have every right to leave you, don't you? I deserve better than the lies and deceit you've thrown at me." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was done listening. "I want you out of my house by the end of the week. I'll handle the separation, but you need to leave. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." The shock on her face was almost satisfying. I felt powerful, liberated from the chains of an unfaithful marriage. I had taken control of my life again, and I knew I wouldn't regret it. As she stood there, stunned and speechless, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I had made the right choice. I was ready for the next step. The next few days blurred together into a chaotic whirlwind of emotions and practicalities. Lisa was a ghost in our home, moving through the rooms with a heavy silence that felt suffocating. Each time I caught a glimpse of her, the anger bubbled up inside me, but I reminded myself that this was a process I had to go through. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. I started preparing for the separation. I reached out to a lawyer to discuss the logistics involved and how to protect myself financially. The thought of going through a divorce felt surreal. We had built a life together, and now here we were, on the brink of tearing it all apart. But I didn't waver. I needed to move forward, to reclaim my life. Lisa, on the other hand, was trying to cling to whatever semblance of our life she could. She begged me to reconsider, to think about the good times we had shared. "Don't throw everything away because of a mistake, Jake," she pleaded one evening, her voice trembling. I stood firm, staring her down, refusing to be swayed by her attempts to manipulate my emotions. "Everything is gone, Lisa. You made that choice for both of us." She attempted to pack her things quietly, but the tension between us was palpable. I could see her frustration boiling over, and I knew she was struggling with the reality of what she had done. It was almost pitiful to watch, but I had no sympathy left for her. She had chosen betrayal, and now she had to face the consequences. On what felt like the longest day of my life, Lisa finally moved out. Watching her load her bags into her car was a strange mix of relief and sadness. I thought I'd feel overjoyed at finally closing that chapter, but instead, I felt a hollow emptiness inside me. As her car pulled away from the driveway, I stood there, rooted to the spot, grappling with the finality of it all. The life we had built was now shattered, and I could feel the weight of loss pressing on my chest. But there was no time to dwell on the sadness. I had to keep moving forward. I poured myself into work, spending long hours focused on projects to keep my mind occupied. I avoided socializing with friends, not wanting to answer questions about my marriage or what had happened. I just wanted to escape into my work, to drown out the noise. After a week of focusing on myself and my career, I finally felt a flicker of hope. I started to see glimpses of my old self coming back, the self that had been lost in the shadows of Lisa's betrayal. I began to reconnect with friends, making plans to meet up for drinks and explore new hobbies. I even signed up for a cooking class, something I had always wanted to try but had never found the time for while I was married. One night, as I was sitting at a bar with a couple of close friends, I couldn't help but share what had happened. It felt liberating to say the words out loud, to admit I was no longer trapped in a toxic relationship. As I recounted the story of Lisa's infidelity and my subsequent decision to leave, I could see the expressions of disbelief on their faces. "I can't believe she would do that to you, man," one of my friends, Dave, said, shaking his head. "You deserve so much better." Hearing those words felt validating. I had spent so much time wallowing in self-doubt, questioning my worth and whether I was to blame for her actions. But in that moment, surrounded by people who cared about me, I realized that I had a support system. I was reminded that I was not alone, that I could move forward and rebuild my life. As the weeks passed, I made strides in my personal journey toward healing. I canceled our joint accounts, changed the locks on the house, and redecorated the living room. It felt like I was reclaiming my space, my life. I started exercising again, running in the mornings and hitting the gym in the evenings. The physical activity helped clear my mind and lifted my spirits. However, I knew I had one last thing to do. It was time to confront Mark. I had seen enough of the damage he had inflicted on my life. I needed him to know that he wasn't going to get away with what he had done. I wanted to confront him, not for reconciliation but for closure. I needed him to understand that he had disrupted my world and that I wouldn't let him go unchallenged. One Saturday afternoon, I drove to the cafe where I knew Mark often hung out. I had his number, so I texted him, asking if he would be around. When he replied, confirming he was inside, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I steeled myself, reminding myself that this was necessary. As I walked into the cafe, I spotted him sitting at a corner table, his usual relaxed demeanor evident as he sipped his coffee. He looked up when I approached, an expression of mild surprise crossing his face. "Jake, what's up? Can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Sure, man, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment I had been preparing for. "You know exactly why I'm here, Mark." His expression shifted slightly, and I could see that he was starting to understand the gravity of the situation. "Look, Jake, no, let me finish. You think you can just slip into my life, mess everything up and walk away unscathed. You took my wife from me, you ruined everything we had." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "I don't care about your excuses. I just want you to know that what you did has consequences. You may think this was just a fling, but it destroyed my marriage. You're not off the hook. You can't just pretend like this didn't happen." Mark squirmed in his seat, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, man. I thought." "Thought what?" "That you could have fun and I wouldn't notice." I leaned in closer, my voice low and intense. "You need to understand that this isn't just a game. You took something sacred and desecrated it. I may be moving on, but you'll carry this with you. Understand that." I turned to leave, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over me. I had confronted the man who betrayed not just me, but also the trust that had existed between us. It felt good to stand up for myself, to take the power back. And as I walked out of that cafe, I knew I was one step closer to fully reclaiming my life. The confrontation with Mark had been cathartic, but it didn't erase the pain of the betrayal. I was slowly but surely moving forward, but there were still moments when I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had loved Lisa with everything I had, and the sudden absence of that love felt like a gaping hole in my life. After confronting Mark, I returned home feeling lighter, but the emotional roller coaster wasn't quite over. I threw myself into my new routine, diving into work and my hobbies. Over the next couple of months, I found myself rediscovering my passions. I started going to art galleries and painting on weekends, something I had loved doing before I got married. It felt good to express myself creatively without worrying about someone else's opinions. Yet, amidst all the progress, there were moments of vulnerability. I would catch myself thinking of the times Lisa and I had shared, the memories that once brought me joy now tinged with sorrow. I had to remind myself that I was healing, that moving forward meant letting go of the past. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, I received a text message from Lisa. It had been weeks since we last spoke. My heart raced at the sight of her name on my screen. I hesitated before opening the message, unsure of what to expect. "Hey Jake, can we talk? I've had some time to think and I want to explain myself. I miss you." I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How could she even think she had the right to reach out after everything? I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my journey. I had reclaimed my life and was building a future without her. I didn't want to fall back into old habits. I typed back a simple response. "I think it's best if we don't. You made your choices. I'm moving on." I hit send and immediately felt a rush of relief. It was a small victory, but it was a step forward. I didn't want to give her any more power over my life. The time for explanations was over. I had given her enough chances to be honest and had witnessed the devastating consequences of her choices. Days turned into weeks, and I continued to focus on myself. I spent time with friends and started dating again, although it felt strange to navigate the dating scene after being in a long-term relationship. I went on a few dates with different women, but I wasn't ready to invest my heart again. Then one evening, while I was at a local bar with friends, I met Sarah. She was vibrant, with a quick wit and infectious laughter that drew me in. We hit it off instantly, talking about everything from music to our favorite travel destinations. As the night progressed, I found myself enjoying her company more than I had anticipated. There was something refreshing about being with someone who wasn't tangled in the drama of my past. After a few weeks of casual dates, I realized that Sarah was different. She had her own life, her own passions, and she respected my space. I felt a spark of excitement that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was a feeling of hope, one that I had thought was lost forever. As our relationship blossomed, I found it easier to let go of the past. The memories of Lisa faded into the background, replaced by new experiences and laughter. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It was a reminder that life could still be full of joy and connection, despite the heartbreak I had endured. One evening, as Sarah and I walked through a park, I found myself opening up to her about my past. I told her about my marriage, the betrayal, and my journey to reclaim my life. I was candid about my struggles, but also about how I had learned to find strength in my vulnerability. "I admire your strength, Jake," she said, looking up at me with sincerity in her eyes. "It's not easy to walk away from a relationship, especially one where you invested so much of yourself, but it sounds like you've really grown from it." Her words resonated deeply with me. I had learned that heartbreak could be a catalyst for growth, pushing me to rediscover who I was and what I wanted out of life. I realized that I had the power to define my own happiness, independent of anyone else. As our relationship flourished, I began to feel like I was finally moving into a new chapter of my life. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, it no longer defined me. I had learned valuable lessons through the experience about trust, self-worth, and the importance of choosing partners who valued and respected me. I decided it was time to finalize the divorce process. I reached out to my lawyer and set everything in motion. I wanted to close that chapter, to ensure that I was fully free to embrace whatever life had in store for me next. It wasn't just about ending my marriage. It was about reclaiming my autonomy and affirming my self-worth. As I signed the final documents, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I wasn't bitter or angry. Instead, I felt empowered. This was my story, and I had taken control of my narrative. I was ready to move forward into a future filled with possibility, leaving behind the pain of betrayal to embrace the joy of new beginnings. With the divorce finalized, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The burden of my past was slowly lifting, and I was ready to embrace the future. I had officially closed the chapter of my marriage, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I was now free to explore life without the remnants of betrayal hanging over me. As I continued to date Sarah, I discovered a deeper connection with her. She was understanding and patient, never pushing me to rush into anything. I appreciated that she respected my healing process and didn't try to compare herself to Lisa. I could finally enjoy the sensation of being in a relationship without the heavy baggage of distrust. One evening, as we sat on her porch enjoying a bottle of wine, I found myself laughing more than I had in ages. I realized how far I had come since the days of sitting in silence with Lisa, drowning in hurt and confusion. Sarah's vibrant spirit was infectious, and I felt a renewed sense of hope and joy. "Jake, I just want to say how much I admire you," she said, looking at me with her expressive brown eyes. "You've been through so much, yet you've managed to find your way back to happiness. It's inspiring." Her words caught me off guard. I wasn't looking for admiration, I was just trying to move on with my life. But hearing her say that made me reflect on the journey I had undertaken. I had faced my demons and come out stronger on the other side. "I appreciate that, Sarah. Honestly, it's been a tough journey," I admitted, "but it's taught me a lot about myself and what I want in a relationship." "Do you think you'll ever be able to fully let go of what happened?" she asked, her tone gentle. I took a moment to consider my response. "I think it's natural to carry some of the lessons with you, but I don't want it to define me. I want to learn from it and move forward. I'm ready for new experiences, new memories, and a fresh start." As the summer days turned into fall, I found myself blossoming in both my personal and professional life. I was thriving at work, being recognized for my design projects, and I even started collaborating with local artists. It felt incredible to be involved in something creative again, something that ignited my passion. Sarah and I continued to grow closer, exploring new adventures and enjoying each other's company. I felt a sense of comfort and peace that I had thought was lost forever. I was learning to trust again, not just in her but in myself. I understood that vulnerability was not a weakness. Rather, it was a strength that allowed me to connect deeply with others. One crisp evening, as we walked through a nearby park filled with autumn leaves, I turned to Sarah. "I'm really grateful for you," I said, my voice sincere. "You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible." She smiled, taking my hand in hers. "I'm just happy to be here, Jake." "You deserve to be happy." That moment felt pivotal. I realized that I had come a long way from the heartbreak that had nearly consumed me. I had learned that moving on didn't mean forgetting. It meant carrying the lessons forward and allowing myself to grow. As winter approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had taken. The pain of betrayal had transformed into a source of strength, pushing me to rediscover who I was. I had embraced my independence and learned to trust my instincts again. I made a pact with myself to always prioritize my happiness and never settle for less than I deserved. I had faced the dark and emerged into the light, ready to embrace the future with open arms. As I stood there, hand in hand with Sarah, I felt a sense of possibility. The past was behind me, and ahead lay a world filled with potential. I had learned that love could be beautiful again, and I was excited to see where this new chapter would take me. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely hopeful about whatever came next. Life had a way of surprising us, and I was ready for whatever adventures awaited, knowing that I had the strength to face them head on.